United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees UNHCR presents itself as UN Refugee Agency. It was created in 1950 during aftermath of the Second World War to help millions of Europeans who had fled or lost their homes. Its first task in 1951 was to help an estimated 1 million, mainly European civilians, including these refugees in a camp in Germany, still uprooted in the aftermath of the Second World War. UNHCR is a full UN organization. It was created as per the UN General Resolution in 1950. It was first created for 2 years to settle European refugees after World War II. It was renewed for 3 years and again renewed for 5 years. Then with the increasing number of refugees, UNHCR was renewed till refugees exist. Like UN General Assembly created them, it can also be deleted. Talking about its mission, it has 2 pillars since its establishment. First is the international protection of the refugees, and third is to collaborate with the states the problem of the refugees and promote protection of refugees. Second is to provide a resolution or assist in the durable solution by helping refugees to return to their own country or to settle permanently in another country. About its achievements, in 1954, UNHCR won the Nobel Peace Prize for its groundbreaking work in Europe. In 1956, during the Hungarian Revolution, 200,000 fled to neighboring Austria. Recognizing the Hungarians as prima facie refugees, UNHCR laid efforts to resettle them. This uprising and its aftermath shaped the way humanitarian organizations would deal with the refugee crisis in the future. During the 1960s, the decolonization of Africa produced the first of that continent's numerous refugee crises. UNHCR also helped uprooted people in Asia and Latin America over the following 2 decades. In 1981, UNHCR received a second Nobel Peace Prize for what had become worldwide assistance to refugees. The start of the 21st century has seen UNHCR help with major refugee crises in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. UNHCR have been also asked to use their expertise to help many internally displaced by conflicts and expanded their role in helping stateless people. In some parts of the world, such as Africa and Latin America, the 1951 Refugee Convention has been strengthened by additional regional legal instruments. UNHCR now has more than 17,324 personnel. UNHCR work in a total of 135 countries, and their budget, which in its first year was US $300,000, grew to US $8.6 billion in 2019. Year 2020 marks the 70th anniversary of the organization. UNHCR have helped well over 50 million refugees to successfully restart their lives in course of its operation. Let's talk who are helped by UNHCR. Primary purpose of UNHCR is to safeguard the rights and well-being of people who have been forced to flee. Together with partners and communities, UNHCR work to ensure that everybody has the right to seek asylum and find safe refuge in another country. UNHCR also strives to secure lasting solutions. For over half a century, UNHCR has helped millions of people to restart their lives. They include refugees, returnees, stateless people, the internally displaced, and asylum seekers. Their protection, shelter, health, and education has been crucial, healing broken past and building brighter futures. An asylum seeker is an individual who is seeking international protection. The internally displaced people seek safety in other parts of their country. Refugees are people fleeing conflict or persecution. Stateless people do not have a nationality and can struggle to realize their human rights. Returnees are people who have finally returned home. Safeguarding individuals, every human being deserves a life free from persecution and discrimination. Let's talk about 1951 Refugee Convention. The United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees, adopted in 1951, is the centerpiece of international refugee protection today. This convention is grounded in Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948, which recognizes the right of persons to seek asylum from persecution in other countries. The core principle is non-refoulement, which asserts that a refugee should not be returned to a country where they face serious threats to their life or freedom. This is now considered a rule of customary international law. The Convention is both a status and right-based instrument and is underpinned by a number of fundamental principles, most notably non-discrimination, non-penalization, and non-refoulement. 1967 Protocol. The 1951 Refugee Convention entered into force on 22 April 1954, and it has been subject to only one amendment in the form of a 1967 Protocol, which removed the geographic and temporal limits of the 1951 Convention. The 1951 Convention, as a post-Second World War instrument, was originally limited in its scope to persons fleeing events occurring before 1 January 1951 and within Europe. The 1967 Protocol removed these limitations and thus gave the Convention a universal coverage. Statute of 1950. States undertake to cooperate with UNHCR in the exercise of its functions, which are set out in its Statutes of 1950 along with a range of other General Assembly resolutions, and in particular to facilitate this specific duty of supervising the application of these instruments. By its statute, UNHCR is tasked with, among others, promoting international instruments for the protection of refugees and supervising their applications. In 2001, states parties issued a declaration reaffirming their commitments to the 1951 Convention and the 1967 Protocol, and they recognized in particular that the core principle of non-refoulement is embedded in customary international law. Now let's talk about the work of UNHCR. UNHCR works in 135 countries around the world, from major capitals to remote and often dangerous locations. Wherever refugees arrive, UNHCR works closely with governments to ensure the 1951 Refugee Convention is honored. Over 10% of UNHCR personnel are based at UNHCR's Geneva headquarters, along with the global service centers in Budapest, Copenhagen, and Amman. These people provide support for the rest of UNHCR, including key administrative functions. While 90% of UNHCR's workforce is based in the field, assisting the most vulnerable victims of displacement. Now let's talk about the work of UNHCR by regions of the world. Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa hosts more than 26% of the world's refugee populations. Over 18 million people in this region are of concern to UNHCR. To note, the number has soared in recent years partly due to ongoing crises in the Central African Republic, Nigeria, and South Sudan. It has also grown as a result of new conflicts erupting in Burundi and Yemen. Americas. Organized crime, armed groups, statelessness, and decades of conflict all pose a serious risk to populations in the Americas. Over 7 million people are now displaced, and asylum applications, particularly from Central American countries such as El Salvador and Guatemala, have sharply increased. At UNHCR works hard to facilitate this, focusing on targeted interventions within countries of origin, as well as countries of transit and asylum. UNHCR also works with partners to find durable solutions, which includes complementary pathways for admission to third countries, local integration, resettlement, voluntary repartition. Asia and the Pacific. The Asia and Pacific region is home to 7.7 million people of concern to UNHCR. They include 3.5 million refugees, 1.9 million internally displaced persons, and 1.4 million stateless people. The majority of refugees originate from Afghanistan and Myanmar. Europe. UNHCR's Regional Bureau for Europe covers 49 countries. UNHCR works in cluster with a range of organizations and partners, including the European Union and its agencies, the Council of Europe, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, other UN agencies, civil society, and NGOs. The Bureau also engages with supranational legal institutions, including the European Court of Human Rights and the Court of Justice of the European Union. The number of people seeking protection in Europe has grown considerably in recent years. As conflict and violence in other parts of the world fuel large-scale and protracted displacement, some refugees are seeking safety beyond the immediate region. Many refugees and migrants continue to take dangerous journey across the Mediterranean. Many have lost their lives at sea or seen loved ones drowned while trying to reach safety. The Middle East and North Africa. This region continues to pose overwhelming challenges with multiple and complex emergency situations on an unprecedented scale. The humanitarian situation in Syria remains volatile. After more than 6 years of conflict, there are over 5 million Syrian refugees in the region and counting. Elsewhere, violence and instability in countries such as Iraq and Yemen is triggering new waves of displacement. Across the region, UNHCR staff deliver life-saving assistance to millions who have been driven from their home. Now, list of the work done by the UNHCR as per the website. The Global Compact on Refugees since 17 December 2018. Advocacy, caste-based interventions, education, environment, disasters and climate change, livelihood and economic inclusion, public health and shelters, fight against sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment, asylum and migration, coordinating assistance, ending statelessness, innovation, protection, safeguarding individuals, solutions. Now let's talk about World Refugee Day. World Refugee Day falls each year on June 20 and celebrates the strength and courage of people who have been forced to flee their home country to escape conflict or persecutions. On 2020, Refugee Day was celebrated with the slogan, "Everyone can make a difference. Every action counts." World Refugee Day was held globally for the first time on 20 June 2001, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees. It was originally known as Africa Refugee Day before the United Nations General Assembly officially designated it as an international day in December 2000. You may be curious about the current High Commissioner of UNHCR, so let's talk about who is the current High Commissioner of UNHCR. Filippo Grandi was the 11th United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. He was elected by the UN General Assembly on 1st January 2016 to serve a 5-year term until 31st December 2020. He was born in Milan, Italy in 1957. Grandi holds a degree in Modern History from the State University in Milan, a BA in Philosophy from the Gregorian University in Rome, and an honorary doctorate from the University of Coventry. He has been engaged in refugee and humanitarian work for more than 30 years, served as Commissioner General of UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Work Agency, the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees from 2010 to 2014, having previously been its Deputy Commissioner General since 2005. He also served as Deputy Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General in Afghanistan and has worked with NGOs and UNHCR in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and at UNHCR's Geneva headquarters. Now I'll be talking about the Handy Guide of UNHCR. The Handy Guide of UNHCR, it is an extract from Handbook for Emergencies, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Geneva 2000. Based on these original handbooks, the Handy Guide of UNHCR was prepared by the Regional Center for Emergency Training in International Humanitarian Response, that is E-Center, established by UNHCR in Tokyo in 2000. If you are really interested to know the emergency standards and indicators of UNHCR, then you can go through the link of the book in the description box below. And at the same time, you can also look into the Handy Guide of UNHCR videos in this YouTube channel. For this, don't forget to subscribe this YouTube. And I hope you really enjoy these videos. We'll see in next videos. Till then, bye bye. Have a good time.